One. Attack.
Okay, so Overwatch has been out in the wild for 24 hours now. The closed beta happened, the successful open beta happened. I think something like 10 million players played it. The game's popularity is through the roof. Unless you've been living under a rock, you would have surely heard about it. But after about 10 hours with the main game, I've been thinking, how can we as a community better this experience? And I think there are a number of ways. Now, I've been playing quite a bit with Reinhardt, and he's kind of bleak, he's clunky, he's this powerful tank character with this smashing hammer and this smothering shield. And I actually think he best exemplifies both the best and worst of Overwatch's community. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to sound like I'm attacking the Overwatch community, and I don't want to sound like I'm shouting down from a perch, bemoaning the skills of other players, because I really don't intend on doing that. You know, it's only been out for 24 hours, and I'm certainly not the best player going around, but what I do hope to do here is kind of make players aware of each character's strengths. And I'm using Reinhardt as an example because he really highlights the importance of team play, structure, and management. Now, Reinhardt is my player of choice when playing attack, and there's a pretty good reason for that. I think he creates a really fantastic move and shield for your teammates to attack behind and to slowly move forward. This makes him particularly useful with a moving objective, because it gives your team more flexibility and scope of the enemy coming from ahead of the objective. Now, I rarely use him in defense, because I think in defense you need a good balance of support and tank characters to kind of cover the perimeter, and as such I don't think you really need a shield to help you progress forward in that instance. Now, he is useful when defending in some situations, no doubt, but I find he is an absolute necessity when playing the attack role. Now, obviously when your team is trapped at a spawn point and the defenders are farming kills from a distance, this is where Reinhardt comes into play. Now, if you're struggling to move forward, this is when you need to bring out his shield. It's important to balance the placement of the shield to cover your teammates from snipers that might potentially be located at high vantage points looking down on the central exit point. What I personally like to do in the early stages of a match is aim my shield at snipers and bastion, as well as any turrets placed nearby. Obviously that's easier said than done, but you do kind of need to pick and choose whether the sniper at the high vantage point or bastion on the ground is going to absorb the most firepower. Now, these characters and tools tend to cause the most damage when on target, so it's pretty important that you and your team take them out as quickly as possible so that the team can progress towards the objective. Now, Reinhardt, just like every other character, has his problems. He's far from perfect. He has a very low weapon range, which makes it difficult to target enemies at a distance. And he's also fairly slow and clunky, but that's for good reason. Now, if you're on target with his rocket hammer, it causes decent damage, and the fire strike does a fantastic job of stunning enemies. His charge is also great, but you must be on target, otherwise you're just going to end up boosting past everyone into a brick wall. That leaves your teammates incredibly vulnerable. He's not an easy character to control, as you know, from an attack perspective, and as such he should be approached exclusively as a walking shield. The problem with this is that players pick him thinking he's a powerful swing and charge character that will help their team. But those abilities are more like additional last line of defense features that should be used sparingly and only when absolutely needed. This means that you're essentially giving up an attack spot on your team for a character that actually rarely attacks other enemies. But that's not how you should be looking at him. He should be looked at as, well, a giant shield. The problem is that all too often the community just doesn't look at him that way. All too often I have chosen Reinhardt and opened up my shield only for my teammates to rush past the shield directly into the line of fire. It basically makes him utterly useless and pointless from a character selection point of view. So let's take a look at what Reinhardt does. Firstly, his giant shield creates a squared protection zone directly behind him. Any good player controlling Reinhardt will be able to move his shield relative to enemy placement. Secondly, this shield can be shot through from behind, but it's going to take a lot of heavy enemy fire to take the shield down. Thirdly, the shield absorbs enemy fire, so teammates need to take out those enemies that are focusing fire on the shield. If you flank around the shield, you're just going to attract enemy fire. Now, this puts your team at a massive disadvantage, especially if the defenders are farming the spawn point. Reinhardt is there to protect you as your team moves forward. So moving out from behind that shield, that's basically like going into the match with one less player, two less players if you include Reinhardt being utterly useless unless his shield is being utilised. I really can't understand why an offensive character would rush out and take on 4 or 5 defenders when they have a shield there protecting them from enemy fire. It's actually rather nonsensical. Now, the major challenge with Reinhardt in my experience is that when he actually does attack, he can leave his teammates incredibly vulnerable. The only time I drop the shield and charge is when there is another Reinhardt directly in front of me, or if I'm taking heavy fire and my shield is about to die. I actually love it when there's another Reinhardt directly opposite, shield up, and it's like a quick draw to see who will charge first. You kind of have to take your chances in that situation and then rush back to the objective. At least then if your shield is down, you're moving quickly and out of harm's way, and then once the charge is over, and hopefully the person you charged at is dead, your shield is regenerated by that point. So Reinhardt's shield is the ultimate weapon when attacking, so use it, play as a team. The objective is to move forward, not to rack up kills. You have to consider that if you move out from the shield and get into a firefight with an opposing player, even if you take them down, your chances are pretty slim against multiple opponents. They might respawn deeper in the map, but so will you, so you lost any advantage that you hope to gain. Taking out an opponent from behind the shield means you survive the battle, and the team keeps moving forward. Stick close to Reinhardt, and only move out from the shield if you can break into a corridor that leads directly to the objective, or if you can sneak up behind the enemy and set up a turret or similar from behind where the enemy is based.